put out of business.
When they came in over the bar, they would pull in along there at Cook Street, and sailors would get out and go up on the lousy rock, throw off their lousy clothes. That would be a jersey and jeans and whatever they had on them. They would leave it there, and the wife would come down and give them a clean change of clothes, and they would take away the old ones for the boiling because they were a bit lousy. It was just, and that's how it became known as the Lousy Rock.
Well, we reckoned today we would have 50 boats here, and I have been informed that there are in fact 52. Well, the regatta was formed in 1987 when Con McCann, the late Con McCann, who owned the Galway hooker, the Connaught, decided that the north of Ireland should have its own regatta for Galway hookers and indeed other traditional boats. And from then it has gone from strength to strength.
The Portaferry Sailing Club was asked some 4 years ago would they host an event for traditional sailing craft, mainly because one of our members had the idea of restoring an old ship, traditional boat, which was a Galway hooker, and he had been at various events in the south of Ireland and on the west coast, and he thought that we in the north could do something similar and possibly even do it better.
We learned a lot as we went along, you know, and we replaced 50% of the boards and a lot of oak ribs, and it's all come together fairly well.
I reckon somewhere in the region between the two of us, somewhere in the region between 500 and 600 hours work, and it's all been worth it because that site coming up that narrows at Portaferry today was something special.
There's always been ships connected with Portaferry, as you can imagine, from earliest times, and really from the time we had the shipbuilding in Portaferry, they were building craft of maybe 100, 200, 300 ton shipping, which was big for that day. The boats that are here today, the Sprixham trawler, for instance, beside us, that would be akin to some of the boats that they would have been building. Maybe twice this size would have been the biggest. They were owned by local merchants in the town that had warehouses, and they would actually own the ships and imported the materials, exported potatoes, that type of thing, imported coal, and that's really how shipping on the large scale grew up as opposed to the fishing boats.
Our family firm is called James McDonnell and Sons. We do know that an Andrew McDonnell was in business as a grocer in Portaferry in 1824. They've always been grocers, but in the early days they were also soap boilers and tallow chandlers. And later on, they are listed in directories as flour, meal and bran stores, tea dealers and ship owners. Now, the firm did have a ship all along because that was the easiest way to bring products into the town from Belfast and indeed Liverpool.
Things have really gone full circle, if you like. We're now getting the old traditional boats back in. Just sorry to say that some of the old characters that would have remembered the old boats are not now available to see the boats coming in at the moment.
And we head from here to the sailing club, where we're all invited to a little reception. We'll have a few gargles there, a bit of crack, and the traditional music and dance will continue right through the night, we hope. Then tomorrow we go on and we have a little race, and again we'll go back into merriment for the rest of the night.
I'm in the club, and the boss of the club told me if you want, you can go in the island to demonstrate with sea kayak, and I said okay, I go.
It's the people really here, the sailing club, the traditional music and the boats. Somehow that and drink go together. Music, boats, and the old black fluid.
And the glorious thing about Portaferry is you do not come in a state of tiredness, or you'll never survive it. So you have a good early night the night before, and then tonight is the big night.
I'm not a film star, I'm not a good looker, but please God I might meet a Galway hooker.
Look, we must come to it because there's very few of these events which are within easy reach of the Clyde, and it's a bit international here.
The weather could be better, but the tide is quite new for us.
Oh, my boat can safely float in the teeth of wind and weather. and out sail the fastest hooker between Galway and Kinsale. When the black floor of the ocean and the white foam rush together, high she rides in her pride, like a seagull in a gale. Oh, she's neat, oh, she's
The riding wheel is basically a circular movement of water. On the surface turns into a whirlpool, but also has an up and down nature that actually you drop into a trough of water and rise again.
Strangford Lough is an amazingly productive system, based largely on its tidal currents, with a powerful volume of water flowing in and out of the loch with every turn of the tide. It's meant that there's a great diversity of animals and plants living around the loch, well supplied with a rich stock of nutrients, so that with this wealth of wildlife around the place, that makes it a very attractive area for people to settle, and they've been settling here for thousands of years.
Going back, I think, some 8,000–9,000 years ago, there's evidence of settlement along the shores of Strangford Lough. Little flints have been found from that Middle Stone Age period. The loch itself provided, I suppose, a means of transport. We know that St Patrick sailed up the loch in the 5th century and went on his mission.
This is the townland of Temple Curry. Temple Curry means the Church of Curry. And Curry was the local saint in this district. He was probably belonged to about the 7th or 8th century, but he's very well remembered and respected in the district. And people still come to his wells. There are 3 wells here. The first one here is the washing or the bathing well. People would use the water of it for external ailments. This one here is the eye well. People who have deficiency in sight and eye trouble would use the water there, as well as praying to the saint. And the next one is the drinking well, down this way. That's for internal ailments. And St Curry's Church is just behind me here, and or what's left of it. There's a modern altar built in the centre because once a year there's a big pilgrimage to it now in recent times. But down over the years, over 1,000 years, people from far distances, they come and they bring the water away with them. So that's St Curry, the local saint.
The loch also provided a base for the Vikings who came and changed its name from Loch Cuan to Strangfjord because of the strength of the current. The next invasion, I suppose, came with the coming of the Normans in the 12th century. When John de Courcy came to Ulster and to Downpatrick in 1177, one of the 22 knights with him was William Le Savage, or William Savage, and he was given as a reward for his services to de Courcy, he was given the lands in the yards. And that family have held the lands since the conquest right down to the present time. They built their castle at Ardkeen, which is about 3 miles north of the town. Their main castle was there, and they also had one here in Portaferry, which guarded the crossing where the ferry is.
The first record of a ferry we had was in 1180. That was in the Savage era. And then we had a royal charter granted by James I in 1611 to Pierce Tumulty of Bankmore, 1/4 of land, and also 1/4 of land in Lakeal. And he then was responsible for supplying and maintaining the ferry boat. And as time went on, they moved up to the last ferry slip there that was used before this modern ferry took over. Sailing boats, when there was enough wind to sail them, when there was no wind, they were rowed, small 14, 15-foot punts. Then we progressed and we got the first motorboats. And again, the ferry changed. We had 2 lantern craft. And one morning got over, unfortunately, in 1946, capsized. It was a tragedy just before Christmas. Then
They were disbanded, these two boats, and were reverted back to the motor and diesel ferries. And that continued on until we got the modern passenger and car ferry in 1969.
The Queen of Connemara is a bounding bar mine.
Behind us we have Portaferry Castle, but it was a later addition. It was a 16th century tower house used by the savages. By the beginning of that century, the old castle was in disrepair, and due to a marriage between Patrick Savage and Jane Montgomery, the Montgomerys actually fixed up the estate here and put the savages really on their feet. And as a result of that, the town of Portaferry. And the castle was inhabited by the savages until Portaferry House was built in the late 1700s. In 1814, as a result of an inheritance from his granduncle, Governor Nugent, in Westmeath, Andrew Savage changed his name to Andrew Nugent, and then that was the family name right up to the present time. And that gives rise to a local saying, we'd rather have an old savage than a new gent.
There's a lot of Portaferry history literally buried in this graveyard. Sailors and seamen. This particular gravestone was erected by a man called Edward Crangle. His son is remembered on the headstone. He was Captain Hugh Crangle, and he was lost on the night of the big wind on the 7th of January 1839 near Arranmore Island at a place called Rutland. This Captain Hugh, he was not only a sea captain, but he was a ship's carpenter as well. And he supervised the building of the ship that he was lost on, the Andrew Nugent. It was built in 1826 in Portaferry on the shipyard.
There's a big business though. You had Thomas Gelston, who was the biggest shipbuilder we had here, and I think he operated here at the castle, just below the castle, in that walled-in place where the lifeboat station is now. And when iron boats came in, the shipbuilding here ceased.
'Twas a glorious eve that I took my leave of sweet Ballyhenry Bay. Not a breath of air broke the calm sea where the vessels at anchor lay.
And he said, oh, goodness, look, he says, off Killaloe, he says,
no.
Lord Justice Andrews, he says, has cut across Lord Bangor's bow. And breeding not to be outdone, he was lying with a telescope, and he says, aye, but you want to hear what he called him.
The regattas originally were organised by the landed gentry. We had the Lord Londonderrys, Lord Bangors, those type of people, and they were the people that could afford the big yachts. They had locally employed yachtsmen to go on board and cruise. They arrived down on the regatta day. After the major boats had sailed, then we had things like fishermen's races, which when the local boats raced each other. This gradually changed, obviously, because even the landed gentry couldn't afford to keep up the boats that they had. Although the main people that run after regattas in this town, that looked after them, were the business people, the farmers, merchants within the town, and they kept the regattas going. And about the 1920s, 1930s, the fishermen decided to take over themselves and start to run regattas and points racing, and that was actually the Cook Street Sailing Club. They continued on until the war years. We actually started in 1967, calling ourselves Cook Street Sailing Club. Although after about 5 or 6 years, we were accused of being too parochial, and we changed our name to Portaferry Sailing Club.
We decided that with the funds that we had available within the club, that we would go out and we would buy our own boats for the club, and we would introduce a junior sailing scheme. From then, we've got kids who have now been educated at Seaboard in Killaloe, and they teach all our kids in the Portaferry area. As recently as this year, 1990, we've had 7 kids picked for the Ulster Schools Championships.
While the flowing tide with its waters wide on its swift course onward bore, to the distant sea, where I soon would be, far, far from the water shore.
Basically, rowing races were part of the regattas right back for 200 years, and even parts of west coast of Ireland and that, we still have the regattas and this gig rowing, that type of thing. We had the similar thing here, and they eventually died off because of the Gaelic Committee really have taken over all onshore sports, that type of thing, and rowing races become part of their events. Eventually they also dropped them out, and what taken over was the Royal National Lifeboat Institute row, and they now have the rowing races between the various clubs.
Today is Portaferry's Lifeboat Day, and we're here today to raise money for the lifeboat. We have the right and wheel row, which is starting at 1 o'clock. This is a rowing race which was in Strangford Lough, and the boats come from the local sailing clubs, and they row for a beautiful ship's wheel.
Obviously, Portaferry is going to win again, but I can't give you any further information. Outside of that, we have the lifeboats which compete together, and the main competition there would be Newcastle Lifeboat, which is our flank station, and the Portaferry Lifeboat station. We then have the ladies group, and again we have Portaferry Sailing Club ladies, we have Strangford Lough Yacht Club ladies sailing from White Rock, and then we have Killalay Yacht Club ladies.
When the race first started, we decided that whatever yacht club won the wheel, they would have to organise the start of the race the following year. This last 3 years, our local yacht club has won it in Portaferry. We try and make the race something like a 3-mile run, but it doesn't really please everyone.
They've been lifeboating area here for over 100 years, Cloughy and then at Portaferry. And in 1978-79, they were doing extensive renovations to the harbour in Portaferry, and they found out that the harbour wasn't a suitable place for a lifeboat, as weekends the lifeboat was getting blocked in whenever all the big fleet and all come in. So Portaferry was an alternative, and in 1979 we got the trainer, and which was a D-class. A year later we got a Zodiac, which was a 2-engine boat, and it went on until 1986 when we got our Atlantic through the goodness of Blue Peter. The week before the TT in the Isle of Man, there was a fishing boat leaving here with a load of people and motorbikes to go to the Isle of Man to take part in it. Actually, Joey Dunlop and Brian Reid were aboard the thing. And just at the end of the loch here, the boat hit a rock, Rock Patrick, and began to sink. And the lifeboat went out that night and took 14 people off it. The boat did sink in the loch, she drifted into the flood, and the next morning some of the crew of the lifeboat went down in their own boats and their divers, and they found the bicycles and brought the first bike up, and after that then all the bikes were salvaged and all the rest of it. But that was Joey Dunlop, always went from Strangford. He thought it was lucky that way, but it didn't happen to be on that occasion.
In Portaferry there were 2 families. One went to Oxford, the other family went to Cambridge, and they did have these competitions on the Thames, but one actually put a bet down, a side bet, and that actually started the Oxford and Cambridge rowing race. So you can say its origins, its roots actually come from the old fishermen's rowing races in Portaferry.
Silence goes on, I'm feeling so tired, I'm not all that strong. Sonny, don't go.
You want to see that ferry boat? No cars allowed on it. They just take passengers.
There's no place to put the cars. They brought them here.
Police estimate on the Friday night of the floats is 17,000 people. Portaferry.
Our gala, I would say without contradiction, is the biggest that I know of in Ireland for a full week, full programme. And as you know, tonight is our climax, floats. And the coveted prize of the floats, of course, through the pubs, is the famous Poe.
It's the pubs are all geared up to compete against one another and not to let each other know what's going on. And they don't know until it all comes to fruition tonight.
We started it Monday morning, and we've been working at it flat out ever since, about 20 of us. As you see, based on the past, present and future of Portaferry. This is how we see it, as 3,000 years ago and 3,000 years into the future. This is a dome, which is slip-in. This is our slip-in super dome. And this is a bridge which could possibly be in Portaferry in 3,000 years. Uncompleted, of course.
This is built on the song The Irish Rover. She was built in 1806, and she loaded a cargo of bricks in Cork, bound for New York to build the City Hall. And on her voyage, she was lost, all hands was lost.
Well, the idea was that it's 25 years of the gala. It's a silver jubilee. And we invited all the VIPs in the world, the top estates, and of course the best singers, the paparazzi. And of course, like, top people always go to Rome, the centre of civilization. Well, we are the centre of civilization of Portaferry, especially in the gala.
In 1966, we had a development committee, and we were starting the civic weeks. You know, things weren't too well in Northern Ireland. You know, the troubles were on the offing, and Terence O'Neill was Prime Minister, and they were starting civic weeks. So one of the development committee rang, said that I think that Portaferry just could do as good as any civic week. So we started off there and then in a very small way, but there it is today, you know.
One of the floats has broken down at the moment. They've lost the power of the generator.
Had the rest overtaking their passing,
I can't get past them.
Oh, I can't
get broken down. I don't want to lose the position in the parade.
Oh, I see.
But unfortunately in life there can only be one winner, and that was the way it is. And the winner tonight of the prize for the best pub float is Dummikins.
The problems mount for the police at Sunhill when a thief shows up. The weakness of the force. That's the bill after the news.